everybody. Welcome back to Eggs Podcast. I'm Ryan. He's Mike. And today we're guestless. So it's just a little catch-up session for us. We haven't talked a lot. We've been busy over the summer. And so it'd be good to sort of do a little catch-up here publicly, I think. And,
it's another situation where a guest just didn't show and we got an hour. So we might as well talk and catch up. And we haven't done it in a while, so it's probably a good thing.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and since we spoke, I mean, we've done a little bit of world traveling. Mike's back on the summer wedding scene, so he's back and forth between Washington State and home, and doing the wedding thing. And we finally got through. I mean, I've complained a little bit on previous podcasts about all the summer travel with trying to get my kid recruited for football, but we finally got to the end of that and got to do a little bit of summer travel at the end, so we can get in some of that and everything else. So, Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing all right. Staying super busy. It's funny. It's like my weddings. My weddings are almost every other week consistently this summer. It's like I got a wedding on a Saturday, then I got a weekend off. Then I got a wedding on a Saturday and got a weekend off. And so it's like just long enough where if I have a wedding back to back, so one Saturday, next Saturday, both in Washington, it's not worth coming back. But 2 weeks is just long enough where it's like, all right, I'm going to come back, I'll get some work done here at the house. And, it's just a lot of driving. And so that's what I've been doing a lot of driving back and forth.
Yeah, no, it's funny. One of the guys that works for me just got back. I was kind of thinking about Washington and all this stuff. So I don't know if you remember a million years ago, we went to, I think you may have treated me, actually. It was kind of a wild weekend, actually. But we went to Kings of Leon up at the Gorge up there in Washington.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
This kid that works for me just went up there for an EDM festival over the weekend.
The one that got blown out with the weather.
Blown up, and he had to, they ended up, I guess, making it up on Sunday or whatever. But they camped up there and did the whole thing. And but so I know when you and I went, I think we had the Restless anniversary party the night before.
In Idaho?
I want to say we got on the road at like 2 a.m. or something, because I remember sleeping somewhere along the way.
Oh, yeah.
And then pulling off.
I forgot we did that.
Up from there. Yeah, no, that was a wild one. So anyway, but he was just telling me about the Gorge, and so I was thinking about Washington and that drive. And so, but I wondered if you knew, because I think I've stopped there with you. I think I stopped there with my family once, but there's a city between probably like Yakima or something, the Gorge and Seattle, that is full of like old trains and stuff like that. Do you know what city that is by chance?
Full of old trains.
Yeah, they have a bunch of like old trains scattered through town. So like as you pull into the city, it must be one of the few kind of biggish cities between there and there. But when you pull in there, they have a bunch of old trains. They have a bunch of old diners and stuff like that. It's kind of a weird vintage town. But I don't know. I'll have to look at a map, but he was just telling me that he went up there. So I was thinking a bunch about Washington, and then I saw your Instagram that you'd been up there too. So
yeah,
kind of in that
I don't know the old trains, but there is Leavenworth, which is an old kind of like German Bavarian kind of city that
sounds fun.
During the wintertime, it's actually amazing. You should maybe do this for one of your winter trips. You go up there and it's like, it turns into a mountain town, snow, German vibe with Christmas, and it's just a really cool town. That sounds awesome. Just outside of Chelan. It's close to Wenatchee, and so it's about an hour away from Chelan, where I go every time.
Oh, I wonder if it's Wenatchee that I'm thinking of.
Maybe.
That's on the way in, and it's a little bit bigger city, right?
It's a little bit bigger city, but I don't think it's train-centric. If it is, I haven't...
You've not been privy to the trains?
Yeah.
No, I know there's a few. They have like these old, like 1950s trains in them, like the old Art Deco looking trains and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I mean, it's kind of a neither here nor there story, but it was just kind of interesting that he was up there. So I was thinking about it, and I haven't been up that way in a long time. So I need to make another trip.
Yeah. So you just went on a trip. I was a little jealous, but then I remembered that right before your trip, I was up in Alaska for 2 weeks and going fishing and stuff. So
so our trip actually was probably somewhat similar to your trip in that you
caught a lot of fish.
Well, we didn't do any fishing actually, but we did mostly because we were traveling with our parents and they're old, and so we didn't do any fishing. But so we did a trip or a cruise to Norway, And from what I hear, it's very much like an Alaskan cruise.
Uh-huh.
So I guess in terms of the sites and the things like that, the cruise that we did in particular was a fjord cruise. So as you go up, you go in and out of these fjords, and which are basically glacier carved canyons in the rock. So they're super vertical on either
Uh-huh.
side. So you have these really steep mountains on either side, and then and then the water down in there is super crystal clear and beautiful. And so we were there just at the end of July, and it was about 65, maybe 70 degrees at the hottest up there. So this
Nice.
was the last cruise of the year that they take up there, and probably because most people aren't dying to go up there when it's freezing. So anyway, so we did that, and so it was pretty cool. I will say though that I mean, no offense to the Norwegians, and I also know that we have a guy on our calendar from Norway, so I don't want to speak ill of the Norwegians. But two observations: one, Norway is gorgeous. I mean, it really is an amazing place to see, and we went to there's a little city called Molde, I think is
Mm-hmm.
how you say it, or Olden or something. And anyway, one of them, and they had a basically like a sky lift kind of deal, like a what the hell do they call them? Not a toboggan. What's the deal that you take at the ski resorts?
Uh,
Gondola.
yeah,
That's the word.
that's the word.
And so they have a gondola that goes from basically sea level up to about 3,500 feet to the top of this cliff, and but it does it in a really short span, so it's like super vertical, and it was very cool. And then we hiked up maybe another 1,000 feet from there. So we were up on top of this enormous mountain looking down, and like our little cruise ship down there in the fjord looked like just like a kid's toy. We were up so high, but it was kind of cool, like from up there. So the big highlight of that part of the trip was that we had a reindeer burger, which was
Oh,
kind of fun. So we'd never had reindeer before,
gamey.
and so it was, I don't know, almost like sausage. My guess is they probably have to season it up a little bit to make it good.
Sure.
So I don't know. So it seemed like the way it was spiced and everything, it seemed a little bit more sausagey, and it was much more dense than you think of as like sort of a normal hamburger meat.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's probably because it's a little leaner, a little more muscular. There's
Yeah,
probably
not
not
as
as
much
much
fat.
not as much fat in it. But that was kind of the one thing they had going for them in Norway was reindeer. So they had the reindeer steaks, the reindeer, all kinds of things that you could get. And then the only souvenir that I found that was of any interest to me, I didn't end up buying one, but was they have reindeer pelts everywhere for sale.
Huh.
And so it's like they're just lousy with reindeer. And so but it is kind of interesting because like this is the thing that I hate about cruises, which is that they're all designed for old, people who aren't really paying that much attention anymore. And so you go into a lot of these souvenir shops and stuff like that, and it's just cheap garbage and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I don't think we found outside of the reindeer pelts, I don't think we saw anything in there that probably wasn't trucked in from China. And then like even in the restaurants and stuff, like I think we met one Norwegian person in Norway.
Yeah.
Everybody in the restaurants comes from somewhere else in Europe. A lot of people, I guess, travel around for summer jobs, which is kind of an interesting cultural thing.
Yeah.
But like the girl that was waiting on us that served us the reindeer was from Austria, and she just answered an ad and took a job in this remote place in Norway for the summer.
Huh.
Like I guess it's just kind of a thing they do, sort of their travel culture or whatever. They like to work out of
Well,
country, so they
even
travel
here
around. It's kind of
locally,
cool.
like Sun Valley Lodge and a bunch of the ski resorts.
Yeah, it seems like
Well,
they attract that kind of
yeah,
people that are a little bit transient, and they come in from wherever. And yeah, so it was kind of like that. So the whole staff of this restaurant was like this Austrian girl, a couple Spanish guys, and a German dude or something. It's like, it's like nobody from Norway, right? So you're trying to learn about the culture, or try and understand things from people Norwegian, but they just, I don't know, they're catering to tourists and stuff, So it's these kind of people. It's not real humans. And
well, and the same thing, like if you go down to the Bahamas, you go down to a place like that. It's the whole economy is based off of
yeah,
tourism, and so
yeah.
they
And for
create
me,
this kind of like
yeah.
little internal loop of where they're sending you and what you're doing, and everything is trying to feed that.
Yeah. So
So,
for me, it's a little bit gross. Like I just don't love that tourismy
mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And so if I had my druthers, I probably wouldn't cruise really. I mean, now there's some perks to it. I mean, like in this particular trip, we were traveling with my in-laws, and they're, quite a bit older, pushing 80. And so, and then like, so it was useful to have access to like their room on the cruise ship. So if
Yeah,
they were tired, they could go lay down, or if they were sick of walking or sick of us or sick of tourism or sick of whatever, they could go take a break or go sit on the deck of the ship or whatever. So that's kind of nice.
yeah,
Also, the line we were on is called Celebrity, and Celebrity is quite nice, and the food was good and all that kind of stuff. So like while you're on the ship, the experience is nice, right? So like, so for the experience of being on a cruise, I think cruising is cool, right? It's just being out on a boat and being out in the open sea and stuff. It's kind of a unique experience. But for the ports and the little places they stop, for me, it's like a little bit gross.
Yeah.
I just didn't enjoy that aspect of it at all. And actually,
Well,
we
I'm
did a cruise a year ago in February, and it was the same thing. And we did go to Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, and Dominican Republic. And of those stops, I found I really only cared for the Dominican Republic. I liked it the most of any of the stops.
sure.
And but part of that was that we got away from the cruise line. We went into the city. It was the only island that had sort of like, I guess, what I would have thought of as sort of stereotypical South American culture, right? They spoke Spanish, things like that. Those
Uh-huh.
other islands all are Dutch colonies and stuff like that. So they don't speak Spanish. It's just a different vibe versus what I expected. But like,
Well,
how much can you get to know about a city in 6 hours or whatever, right?
you
And so
can't
when
really.
the cruise ship stops and you only have 6 hours, it's like the things that are important to me are the food, the culture, the people. Like I'm interested in learning about them. And you show up at these places and it's just like, okay, well, you've got 6 hours to walk around, buy some trinkets, you know, that are all imported from somewhere
Here's
else.
another
And
Aloha shirt. Here's
yeah,
a
yeah.
yeah.
And it's just so for me, that stuff is really unappealing. So like I would rather have taken 10 days in the Dominican Republic than 10 days cruise with like a day landing in Dominican
Yeah.
Republic.
If you
And I
want to
understand not
just see
everybody's
the
that way, but for
sights
me,
and you just
it's
want
more that
to
way.
experience, the area and be like, oh, I was in the Alps or, whatever,
Yeah.
sure, that works. But you're same. Like,
Well,
I hate getting into a small town in Mexico and all it is a tourist trap. And then
yeah.
after that, you
Well, and
know,
it's just I mean, you think about it like in your own relationships, in I don't know. I mean, everything that's going on politically right now, you know, just all this stuff. It's like everything's kind of superficial and fake. And
hmm
it's like what really matters are the deep relationships with friends. It's the cultural aspects of a city. It's, you know, like what's fun for me anyway, like, you know, like what you're saying, if I'm in a little town in Mexico, what's fun is getting off the beaten path with somebody who knows their way around and going to a restaurant that's good,
yeah,
you know, and going to, you know, a place where somebody's mom is still in there cooking the beans or whatever. Like that experience to me is much more valuable than heading to the souvenir shop that's selling the same set of maracas. You know
yeah.
what I
Last
mean?
time I went to Cabo, like Cabo is a tourist trap. You got all the glass bottom boats, you got all the fishing tours, all that stuff. Um, I got out with my friends and we went out, and saw the legit part of Cabo, Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Penasco, all these different areas, just going out and getting legit food and meeting people and shopping in the actual markets, instead of, going directly to the condo, coming out, going on a fishing trip, coming out, going to the what is it, the Margaritaville, or
Yeah.
those kind of places.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Senior frogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just stuff I
No,
don't want to
and
do.
that's the thing. And I get it. Like some people that maybe what they want to do and maybe they feel safest. And I will say that as my knowledge of sort of, you know, Spanish culture, Latin culture, all that stuff has grown. Being able to speak some Spanish, even though I'm not like amazing, but speaking some Spanish. My two sons having been taught Spanish over the last several years, and then just sort of the last time we went to Cabo is a good example. We went with somebody who's Cuban and Portuguese, but speaks Spanish really well.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's brown, and he looks like he could be from there or whatever. So traveling with a person like him, who speaks the language, who kind of looks the part, who's also just, I mean, he does a ton of travel into Latin America and stuff, so he knows the cultures, he knows all the stuff. And so traveling with a guy like that, knowing a little bit about the language and all that, sort of knocks down some of the barriers that I think could be really scary for other people. Which
Sure.
is like if you speak no Spanish and you speak nothing, it's like if you get off the main road, like you could be totally lost, right? But if you can kind of speak to people or know your way around or whatever, I mean, everybody is cool. Like, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, I'm sure there are bad actors out there, but generally speaking, everybody's great.
Yeah.
And getting off the beaten path is like where you really start to see these parts of the city, right? So when we went to Cabo last, we were with these guys or this couple who, you know, speaks great Spanish and you know knows the area and everything. And you know, so we went to a lot of restaurants that were a little off the beaten path, but like we even rented a car one day, which I know a lot of people are nervous about. And, you know, I mean, admittedly, I was even a little bit nervous about it. But we went out to two different cities that are sort of from, you know, a little bit out of town from Cabo, but we ended up in a little place called La Paz. Well,
I
La
like the
Paz
pause.
is, I mean, it's a big city, it's a beautiful city and all that stuff, but it's not as touristy, right? Like it's not like where the cruise ships stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up with just, it's a little bit more, I guess, a real city. You know, you get there and you see how people actually live, and, you know, the food is for the people who live in that country. It's not, you know, catered, or, you know, the spice isn't reduced or whatever for people who are white. You know,
And that's
it's
what
like,
makes it good.
yeah, it's the
It's
whole
like,
thing. And so it's like, so I find, and did find on this cruise that some of that was kind of where I felt things were lacking a little bit, was on, you know, when we got into the cities. And I mean, two, I think, of the four cities we stopped in were very small, like 600 people. So I mean, they're literally a cruise stop, kind of like
yeah,
there's that place, I think it's Skagway, Alaska. I used to
yeah,
work for a guy who his kids own a bunch of little stores in Skagway, but like outside of cruise season, there's nothing in Skagway.
yeah.
And so, but during the cruise season, it's all these tourist shops, right? And so, and so these cities were kind of like that, right? There's a couple things to do, but it's really just about, you know, getting tourists off the ship and letting them shop a little bit. And so, so I found that that bit of the experience was a little bit of a letdown. There were a couple cities that were a little cooler. I think the last one we went to, I might mess this up, but I think it's called Alisund, and it was a much more interesting city. You know, 150,000 people or something, and you know, so more of a city. And you know, it was a cool spot to go to. One thing that was interesting in Norway, though, is a lot of these cities had been affected by fires. So
Oh,
the
really?
cities themselves actually are quite small, but have been rebuilt in the last 100 years because they burned to the ground. And
Wow.
so both, I think Alisund was that way, or part of it was, and then the prior city we were at was that same way. And so it was just like, you know, kind of interesting. But there's not. I mean, one of the things that I find most appealing or attractive about like Europe and stuff is the ancient things.
The old
And
stuff.
so,
Yeah.
and these cities didn't have much of the ancient stuff because, you know, it had all been lost. So it
You
was.
you did you did spend some time in Amsterdam beforehand, right?
Mhm. So
So
before we went out, so we cruised out of Rotterdam actually, and so this was actually kind of a nice part of the experience too. So my family, the Rogars, come from Amsterdam, and then another little city called Groningen or Groningen, and uh, and so you know I've always had kind of an affinity for that area anyway. I'd been there once for a weekend years ago, but not really enough time to see the city or anything. So on this cruise, or preparing for the cruise, we went out about 3 days early so that we could kind of, you know, hang out a couple days in Amsterdam. On the third day, we had to move down to Rotterdam and check that out. And I will say that we didn't get much time in Rotterdam, but I would like to go back to Rotterdam and spend
yeah,
an extra minute. So Rotterdam is one of these interesting cases too, because it's an old city, but during World War II, it was largely bombed to the ground, and so they
oh,
lost a significant amount of their like historical stuff. So they too don't have a ton of the new, or a ton of the ancient things around. And I imagine there's still a few things. We didn't get a lot of time in town, so we didn't get to explore a lot. But but the one thing that's really interesting about them is that they're kind of super modern. Like the new buildings that are going up are really cool, and the design aesthetic is awesome. And so, I mean, even though it's kind of modern, it has a little bit of sort of old European on the water kind of thing going, but it's also really modern and upscale. So it was very
hmm,
cool. And so anyway, so when we first got to Amsterdam, the uh, the plan was, traveling with older people, was to try and make things kind of as simple as we could for them. So we took the train from the central station to sort of, or from the airport down to the central station, sort of on the sort of center of kind of the touristy area of the city. And we just got a hotel right across the street from the central station so that we could make it really easy for the parents. And also when we were going to Rotterdam, the plan was we'd just be able to hop the train and cruise to Rotterdam,
sure.
so we could just use the local transit for everything. Um, we stayed at this place called Art Hotel. I'm probably saying it weird, but there's no H. It's like Art apostrophe Hotel.
Didn't we
And
used to stay in like an art hotel or whatever? Like in Boise, there was one that we stayed at. I think.
we used to stay at a place there called the Hotel 43.
Oh,
That,
okay,
that kind
yeah.
kind of, but it's the same kind of vibe, same kind of place. And so this art hotel was, I mean, huge shout out to those guys. I can't remember which chain of hotels they belong to. It's like Radisson or one of them. I should probably know so I don't shout out the wrong people. But their place was phenomenal. And I will say that this is the one big observation, or one big takeaway from the Netherlands. And I don't know if this was just by virtue of they're just nice to tourists, but the customer service there and the people that we encountered were just spectacular. Every single person we met, with only one exception, and he knows who he is.
That guy.
You know, with the exception of that one guy, everybody we encountered in Amsterdam was very friendly, and it was a ton of fun. The people at the hotel were great. We got in the city about 11, but we couldn't check in until 3. So they just, they offered to hold our bags. The people who work in the lobby there, and I wish I'd have taken note of the people who actually checked us in. But there's 2 guys that sort of run their lobby that are like their bellmen, I guess, or sort of helpers in the out there. It's this guy named Brian and this other guy named Jamal, and those 2 dudes.
Shout out Jamal.
Yeah, right. Those 2 dudes were the coolest, most helpful, like just awesome dudes. And so when we got there, they took our bags and everything, super friendly. Everybody's great. They gave us a bunch of coupons to go get free drinks out of the bar while we waited to get in our room. So, and we'd been on the flight all night and then, arrived in town. So we were tired. So we just went and sat in the bar. Great cocktails and everything at the bar. They have a restaurant inside called Arca, which is spectacular. We went back for dinner a couple nights later. It's basically a Michelin star restaurant without the Michelin star. But the people who work there are trained by their parent restaurant in Portugal that is a Michelin star. So they train over there under this Michelin star chef or whatever, and then they come out and they work at this store to, I guess, cut their teeth or whatever. And so the food was amazing. It was like kind of a Portuguese Asian hybrid, and it was spectacular. It was really great.
That's awesome.
So, but anyway, so the staff was great. The hotel, the rooms themselves are really nice. The place was great. I don't know that I've ever slept better in a hotel room. Like the mattress was spectacular. Everything was great. And, so we were right in the city, and we got to walk around and do a little bit of exploring. It was right like 2 days before the big Pride Festival stuff was going to go on there. And so Pride I guess it's one of the biggest events, or one of the biggest Pride celebrations in the world is in Amsterdam, which tracks. And so there was a lot of like hype building up to that, right? So there were a lot of people getting into town and stuff. So it was really crowded. It was fun traveling with 80-year-old parents, because there was some, suspect behavior going on in the streets and stuff like that. That we had to sort of temper grandpa or temper grandma's attitude a little bit. But largely everybody was cool and there's no problems. So anyway, so we did some shopping, did it, all the normal touristy stuff, walked around and did all those things. Then when it came the morning to cruise to Rotterdam, we were just going to go get on the train. And this guy, Jamal, over at the hotel was like, I've got a buddy that drives. Let me see if he'll take you. And
nice.
Okay, I guess, no problem. Can he take all 6 of us and, luggage and all that? Yeah, no problem. He's got a van. So anyway, so he ended up hooking us up with his buddy, who had kind of like a small Sprinter van kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically just sat in the back, the 6 of us, and he drove us to Rotterdam, and it was amazing. And, it was a little bit more money than the train, obviously, but it was still better, a much better experience. And
sure.
So we went down to Rotterdam, hung out for a day. We stayed at a place down there. I don't know how they say the hotel's name. It's NHOW. So I don't know if it's NHOW or if it's now or whatever. I don't know how they do it. But we stayed at this hotel because it was right next door to the cruise port. So again, in the interest of like making life easy for the grandparents, we stayed in the hotel that was right next to the cruise port. So that all we had to do was walk out the back door and get in the ship. So it was super slick. And that hotel too, just like the hospitality is just like on fire. These guys are amazing. And so, and it's not like an expensive hotel. This Art Hotel was a little bit more money, but it still wasn't horribly expensive. Maybe a couple $100 a night. What you'd pay for a Radisson or a hotel around here.
Sure,
nothing crazy. And this Howe place was actually even cheaper. It was more like a Holiday Inn price. It was like $160 or 160 euros a night, and but it was spectacular. And the breakfast there in the morning is amazing. They do these big international breakfasts with like everything for everybody. So they have all your cold cuts. They do all the fresh stuff, the eggs and the bacons and the pancakes. They basically cater to like a really diverse audience of people, right? The one thing they don't do is pork sausage and stuff like that. I guess they have a lot of Muslim tourists and stuff like that come through. So out of respect for them, they don't do pork. And so everything's like a chicken sausage or that kind of thing. But amazing. Everything's amazing. And it's just wild how they cater to everybody. And it's awesome. Like it's such a cool experience. And so,
did you see the warning while you were there?
I did. So we'll get to that because that's at the end of the trip. So those were the days that we did all the kind of the off stuff. So anyway, so we got on the ship the following morning. It was funny though, the night before we'd gone to the bar at the hotel and we were just having some cocktails and stuff in the evening. And we go to leave back, and I don't know, people who know me know I'm a little sarcastic with my wife and I'm always giving her shit. And so we were on the elevator with somebody and we're going up to the top or whatever, and she was saying something, just making fun or whatever. And so I turned to this guy that's on the elevator and I'm like, do you want to just take her with you? Like, just get her out of here. You take her with you. And he laughed and everything. We part ways. Well, so the next morning we run into that guy again, and it turns out he was the captain of our ship. And so we had a nice conversation with him. I guess he was taking over the captainship. This was his first day on this ship, so he was taking over as captain. And so anyway, I had a nice conversation with him. Everything. He ended up taking our names and room numbers, our cabin numbers on the ship. He's like, oh, maybe we'll get together. And so anyway, we got on the ship. We had like I don't know, third or fourth day of the cruise. We came back to our room and there's a little wine bottle in there with compliments from Captain whatever his name was.
Nice.
And so it was kind of cool. And we got invited to a couple like captain's parties and things like that where we could go up and hang out, and super cool experience. So all that was great. So we go on a cruise, come back 7 days later. So the rest of the family is staying at a hotel near the airport because they're leaving the following morning. Me and my wife decided to spend an extra day because our anniversary was on August 2nd. And that was, wait a minute. Yeah, August 2nd. And well, I always get it mixed up because I think it was August 2nd, 2003. So we always mix up August 3rd and August 2nd. I think it's August 2nd. But so anyway, so it was our anniversary while we were on the cruise. But so we decided we'd stay in Amsterdam an extra couple nights and just hang out, just the two of us. And so we got back to Amsterdam. Everybody else went out to the airport. We went into the city again. So in our first day back, we went out to the stadium where Ajax play, which is like the big Dutch soccer team there, the big team from Amsterdam. So we went out to their stadium, did a little stadium cruise or stadium tour. But it just happened to be the same day they were announcing the new team for the new season, which I think just kicked off. Nice. And so it was, I mean, I don't know, 60,000, Dutch people out there, soccer fans, and they had a big stage and music and all this stuff. It's also where I learned that I think Dutch music is not my thing. And I mean, I'm sure there's good varieties and stuff, but this was kind of like that Hasselhoffy kind of sound. And so that wasn't great. But the rest was cool. The vibe was cool. The stadium's amazing. And so then we went back into town, and this is where things got a little funky. So I don't know if people can see over my shoulder. There's a poster here of this band called The Warning. I've been doing these poster illustrations, and I did this band called The Warning, and The Warning just happened to be playing Amsterdam on these extra couple days while we were there. So I was like, well, why don't we go to the Warning show too? So we did that, and so while we were at the stadium in Amsterdam, I noticed on Instagram that their manager is at the stadium too.
Nice.
And he had posted that he was at the stadium, right? So I jump on there and I'm like, hey man, we're at the stadium, can we catch up or whatever? Crickets, nothing from him. But I just kind of kept chatting. I was like, hey man, we're in town. We came 5,000 miles. We're here for the Warning show. We're going to see the show this week, tomorrow. It was the next night. And we're like, hey, any chance of getting in to meet the band or whatever? Because unbeknownst to me, in the time between when we booked to go to the show and the time the show was happening, there was a VIP experience, like a meet and greet thing.
Oh.
And I had taken these posters with me to Amsterdam to try and see if I could maybe meet the band or something, have them sign the posters while we were over there. And so I'd taken them over. And unfortunately, the meet and greet thing had sold out. And back to Jamal over at the Art Hotel, he had called a friend that works at the venue before we left for Rotterdam to see if they could get me backstage, because he was like, oh, I know a guy that works over there. Let me talk to him. So he calls him up and they have a whole conversation, seeing if he can hook me up to get back and meet the band and stuff. So, I mean, just again, above and beyond with those guys. When Tia and I came back, we stayed at the W Hotel in Amsterdam. And again, just the hospitality, I just can't even say enough good things about the hospitality.
Well, I used to work for the W Hotel in Seattle.
Yeah, they're nice hotels. This place is beautiful. I mean, it's, incredible. The people were great. Yeah. The room was great. Like, I couldn't have been happier with the place. And just, man, I don't know. Like, I felt so impressed by the hospitality over there that I guess I didn't realize how bad it had gotten over here. Like at least in the States or where I'm at. I mean, you run into an occasional host that's great, or you get a good waiter or whatever. Like, I mean, it's not that everybody's bad, but like these guys were like over the top. Like anything they could do for you, they were bending over backwards. They were making phone calls. They were doing whatever, and it was just like, I'm very pleased with all that, and I just love the people over there. So anyway, so the next day, or I finally hear back from the warnings manager, and he's like, meet and greet sold out and whatever. He's like, just go stand at the end of the line. I'll watch for you. And so I was like, yes, we're in, right? So we're going to be able to do this. We'll go meet the band. We'll have them sign the stuff. And turns out that the meet and greet was at 6, and we had tickets for the Anne Frank house at 5:30. And for anybody who's tried to book the Anne Frank house, you have to do it like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. It's like, I think every Tuesday they open up the next 6 weeks. So we had to, so we booked this thing forever ago. And like, if you show up day of, like, there's just no hope. Like you're just not getting in. And so, and it's surprising. I mean, it is very cool and it is very interesting, but it's wild that it's so booked.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
so booked out.
Yeah, it's insane to me, actually. Because I mean, it is neat and everything. It was a cool experience, and I'm glad we went through it. I'm just surprised it's so popular, I guess. But anyway, so we went to Anne Frank, and unfortunately, we couldn't make it over to the venue in time for the meet and greet. And so, even though we've got access or whatever, we couldn't go. Yeah. So we head over there after the Anne Frank house, and that was like the one thing my wife really wanted to do. She teaches some history, and they cover Anne Frank every year, and so so for her that was like the pinnacle of the trip, right? I couldn't ask her to skip that, so I could go hang out with the warning. And so
why not? You do it for everything else.
I know, right? I should have, but no, this was her one thing, so I wasn't going to get in the way of that. So we start from there. We walk down to the venue, and where they're holding the concerts, this place called Melkweg, which I guess is like Dutch for Milky Way. And it's this really cool old venue. I guess it used to be a place where they made milk. And now it's a concert venue. So it's this really cool spot. And so we went down there. We got there, I don't know, like right at doors. And there was just a mile of people around this building, right? I mean, the place is sold out. The show was sold out. It's probably 1,500 people, something like that around this building.
Nice.
And so I got there with my wife, and I was just like, let's just go eat. Like, we're not going to cut in line and get up front. Like, there's no we're not going to fight people for front row. Yeah. And it's like, so just let everybody fill in. We'll just stand at the back of the room, have a beer or whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. Like, I want to go see the band, but I don't need to be like front and center.
Sure.
So we went off, we had dinner, they filter everybody in. So as we're coming back from dinner, I bump into their manager. He's standing on sort of this bridge out front of the door. And I'm like, I come up to him, I'm like, hey man, I'm Ryan, we've been talking blah, blah, blah about the posters and all that stuff. And so we get talking, and basically he was like, if you want, I'll get them signed for you. He's like, it's too late. They're, getting ready for the show now, but he's like, but if you want, I'll take your posters back and have them signed for you. And then I'll just find you somewhere in the venue and I'll bring them back to you.
Nice.
And so I was like, it was a little leap of faith. I didn't know the guy or anything, but I handed him my little tube with the posters in it. And he took him backstage, and there's 3 posters, one of each of the members of the band individually. And then there's 2 posters that are like group photos. So the one behind me is one of the group photos, but each of those illustrations basically have their own poster too. Nice. And those, for anybody who followed me on Instagram or whatever, when I was doing those posters, which is maybe the last time I posted on Instagram. So like March or April. So they basically, there were 3 nights that they were playing in Spain that I had hoped to be at, actually, but I wasn't able to go. And so, and people who listen to the podcast know I have kind of an affinity for Spain. So, but they were playing 3 cities in Spain that I love. And so I did, one for each girl. I did a poster for each of those 3 cities. So I did one for Madrid, one for Spain, and one for Bilbao, or one for Barcelona and one for Bilbao. Mm-hmm. And so he brought back, they signed everything for me, which was very cool. They signed the group poster, all 3 of them did, and then the individual posters by themselves. So that was pretty cool. And right. And basically we went into the venue and we just hung out in the back, and at some point the manager came out and he was able to find me and hand over the tube. So anyway, so it was a very cool experience. I'm really grateful to him for taking the time to do that. Cause I mean, obviously it's not something he had to do, and he was already kind of making an exception for us. And I think he was actually a little bit irritated that we didn't show up for the meet and greet. So, because he was like, hey, yeah, I'll get you in, And so I think it was like I did you a favor and then you didn't come. So it's like, so I understand that. So Rudy Joffroy is the guy's name. So shout out to Rudy for being so cool and helping us out and get those posters signed. Hopefully we'll catch the warning over here in the States or something and pay him back, or see when take him out for a beer or something.
There you go.
And but anyway, very cool. The band was amazing. Probably, I mean, I was thrilled to death because it's probably one of the first kind of rock shows I've been to in a while. And these girls shred, and they're incredible musicians. And they
just played on Fallon or something the other day.
They were on Kimmel the other day too. Kimmel, I don't know if they've done both, but they were for sure on Kimmel. Yeah. And so I mean, they're kind of. It's funny because since I drew those illustrations in April until now, they've blown up. Like they've sold out like 2 European tours since then. They've done. I mean, they're going ham. They're doing amazing, and so it's really cool. But unfortunately, they became probably less accessible since April, right? Because in April, I was like, oh, I could probably just go meet these guys. And by August, it's like, I don't think I can meet these guys. So it, so
did you get any feedback on the posters? Did they like them?
That's the one thing that bummed me out. I would have liked to have at least heard or known if they thought they were cool or didn't like them or whatever. Like I'd have liked some feedback. And it was in the middle of the show, so Rudy didn't say anything. He wasn't like, "Hey, dude, they think it sucks," but they signed it. So anyway, so I didn't get any feedback. So my goal was to get back on Instagram or whatever and thank the band and see if I could get any kind of comment from them. But I think it's kind of the gift and the curse of their popularity. They're basically 3, pretty young Mexican girls. They're good-looking ladies. I'm sure they are accosted all day by fans and things like that, and so they don't really answer on social. So I'll have to catch them sometime in the States, and I don't know, maybe we'll crossroads at some point. And,
there you go.
I can find out, because I would be curious to know if they actually gave a damn and thought they were cool. One of the things that happens, or that I notice, is when I do these digital illustrations, people don't think of them in the same way as they do like art with pencil or whatever.
Sure.
And these illustrations are done for reals. Like, I draw them, and, I do all the same steps that you would in like a real piece of art. I just make them digitally so I can do these painting or prints and stuff. And so sometimes I think people don't necessarily realize all the work that goes into them.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I hope they liked them. And, if by chance they happen to hear this or whatever, thanks for signing that and making that possible. It's actually unfortunate, with the exception of Mo, who's the one right here over my head, who I need to try and get a signature to. My other 2 were MF Doom and Lemmy, who are both dead. So I can't get those signed. So we're not going to be able to get a whole wall of signatures here. But, but the warning kicked it off by being willing to sign that. And I really appreciate it. So that was very cool. So, but I will say just one last thing to sort of, wrap up this really lengthy conversation about me. The one thing I noticed too, so I've already been kind of gushing about the Dutch people and everything, and so in the venue, and for anybody that's been in like a venue like this, like pretty cramped quarters, 1,500 is a lot of people in there. Like in the U.S., it's probably more like a 900 capacity.
Sure.
Like they were cramming a lot of people into this place, and so it was pretty cozy in there. But like we were standing at the back of the bar. But one thing I thought was really interesting is that we met a guy standing in the back. And the Dutch are sort of, stereotypically very tall, right? I mean, like they're sort of one of the taller nations in the world. And, even the women, like the average height for a woman is like 5'10" or something. The average height for a guy is like 6'2" or 3 or something.
Yeah.
And so, they're relatively tall people. My wife, on the other hand, is very short. And so she's 5'2". And so we went into this venue, and basically, I don't know if they just do this naturally or whatever, but there was like a wall of tall people at the back of the room.
Oh, wow.
Like they were being polite. Like, I know I'm 7 foot tall. I'm not going to stand in front of you.
Dude.
And so like we met a guy that was like, I was looking up at him. I don't know how tall he was, probably 6'8", something like that. 6'6", 6'7". Like, cause I'm 6'2". So, it's like not too many rooms do I feel too small in, but among these guys, I was, pretty tiny. And so I was talking to this guy, and he's just the nicest guy. And he used to work in sound production. So he was kind of like me, like had all these, old war stories from working in the music business, and just kind of loves the whole vibe. And so we were sitting in the back talking, and he was really tall. And we were talking about just how, nice everybody is and how friendly everybody is. And he was kind of like, yeah, and they were looking at, or like, we just kind of made this observation that like, so if you go to a rock show in the States, like it's pretty rowdy. Like everybody's bumping into each other, and they're jumping around, and they're doing all this stuff. And I imagine that some of that was probably going on at the front of the room. But in the back of the room, everybody was like, couldn't have been more polite. Like, so my wife and I are standing at the back. I stood behind her, and then these mountain of giant people stood behind me. And, but like this couple in front of us actually split so that Tia could see between them. And they
That's
basically
amazing.
stood perfectly still and straight next to each other with a gap in between them for the entire show so that
That's
Tia could
awesome.
actually see past them. And at one point, like this guy came in, and he was trying to, sneak his way through or whatever, try and get by me, and basically got to a spot where his buddies were or whatever. And it was kind of up against me, and he'd kind of, rubbed on me or whatever, which he was apologetic for. But then he stood there kind of next to me and just kind of kept his arms at his side and didn't talk, like didn't jump around or act raucous or crazy or anything, but just kind of stood there really polite like the whole time. And it just occurred to me that all these people are just like, even the way they do concerts is just super friendly and polite. And everybody was so cool. Like, I just couldn't even believe it. It,
Yeah.
it was the weirdest thing for being like at a rock show. I mean, like, it's fine if we're listening to Barry Manilow, but it seemed kind of out of place for like a rock show. And so I was really impressed by that too, just like how chill everybody was.
Well,
And
it's
this
funny. I
guy I
mean,
was talking to was like, this is about as heavy music as we get into. He's like, a lot of the Dutch don't go much heavier than this. And so it was kind of interesting.
yeah. Remember the Flogging Molly concert we went to a few
Mm-hmm.
years ago? I actually took a photo of a 7 foot tall guy that literally just walked in front of me and you wearing a cowboy hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
In case he
not
wasn't
only
tall
are you
enough.
so tall, you're going to go ahead and put this billboard up and stand right in front of me, and he shows up last
Yeah.
second. So it's a
Yeah.
completely different kind of like,
Yeah, it's just a different mentality. It's a little bit more
uh,
I'm out for myself and this kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe we're just, I mean, I don't want to over, simplify the situation. Maybe we were just lucky we ran into a group of great people who were kind of, we're all in it for a common purpose. We're all doing this thing, and so everybody was more or less generous to one another.
yeah,
But it just in general, our experience with people in the Netherlands was just incredible. Like, I
that's
couldn't
awesome.
be more pleased with how that bit of the trip went. And
I
of
still
course, since
haven't.
then, I've been nagging my wife about moving over there.
Yeah, I still haven't been to that side of the world. I've been to Asia a few times, Mexico a few times.
Yeah, it's
All
time.
all over that, but I've never been to like.
Yeah, I have to book one more trip somewhere to keep my Delta status. So if
Oh,
you're dying to go back to Amsterdam, let me know.
well,
So so anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of our trip. I mean, obviously it was a long-winded trip, and we're just trying to have a little conversation here. But so it was kind of a lot to cover. But yeah,
no
great
worries.
trip, and that was kind of the capper to our summer because now we're deep into football season, and I'm coaching again, and our oldest son is in his senior year, so his games are very important. So it's like gotten pretty wild over here. So we're slammed and kind of back to business. My wife teaches school, so she's back to school, and everybody's back to work.
Has
And
it started all out? All,
they started. We got back from Amsterdam on the 6th. She started back on the following Monday.
wow.
So they've pushed it up so far. When I was a kid, we used to start on September 8th. And I always knew that because it was my friend's birthday, so it was like tragic because we went back to school on my friend's birthday.
Yeah, that
But I mean,
sucks.
so we're literally a month earlier than that now, and
Wow.
so and it's I can't
Does
figure
it
it
end a
out. So
month earlier?
no, it goes the same time. They might have an extra weekend or two here and there where they're putting in like some teacher work days and stuff. So we don't
Okay.
actually get the benefit of it because my wife usually has to work them anyway. But the kids have to go a certain number of days every year anyhow, and so
Yeah.
they just it doesn't seem to matter. The end stays the same, but it's starting earlier and earlier every year.
Hmm.
So, but
Oh
yeah,
well.
so everybody's back to business. For us, the summer's officially over, and it's football season, baby.
Yeah, I got 6 more weddings. My last wedding's like middle of October, and then I might be heading down to Phoenix and doing wedding season down there over winter with Jeff.
Oh, that'd be
Jeff
awesome.
Jones. I don't remember that, but
Yeah, good
that's
podcast
contingent.
alumni, Jeff
Yeah,
Jones.
I know. Good dude. He's actually he's doing the AZ DJ Summit this weekend, which is like a gathering of all the DJs in Arizona, and so that'd be fun to go down for, but it's kind of a long trip, and
Yeah, for a
I'm booked
weekend.
anyways, so I couldn't go anyways. But
Yeah. Well, that'd be cool. So yeah, hopefully you
yeah,
can do that because that's the one thing that I'm looking at my winter and I'm going crap. I'm stuck in Utah. I got to figure out somewhere to go.
yeah.
So yeah, so I gotta figure something out. But yeah, I would be super jelly if you're in Arizona.
Well, we got a place down there, so if you ever want to come down and kick it,
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Spend some time.
Yeah, I would love to, man. I love it down
Anyways,
So.
What else was I? Oh, I just applied for a job up in Homer, Alaska,
Oh, cool.
running a festival.
Ooh.
So it would be it's 9 months out of the year, hourly rate, which is pretty good, and I think I'd get benefits, but I'm not sure. But
nice.
that'd be really cool because it'd be networking in that kind of world, and B, it's right up my alley. It's something I'd have fun doing.
No, that's really cool. Unless it's like a Renaissance festival or something. It's a different kind of thing altogether. So maybe you've got something you want to tell us.
It's I don't know exactly all the details behind it, but there's music involved, and there's like different, vendors and stuff. So it'd be kind of a fun thing to be a part of. And I'm trying to relocate up there anyways. So if anyone has a fun job up in, Homer or
for
that
people
surrounding area,
who followed the show, Mike got the Alaska bug. Was it last summer or 2 summers ago now?
Oh, when I went up to Nome.
When you went up to Nome. And now Mike's looking for every excuse to get to Alaska. So if anybody knows,
I transferred my driver's license and my all that stuff. I'm an Alaska resident now.
Oh, see, look at him go.
Now I just gotta
get a job there so he can live there.
Yep.
So our little Mikey's trying to go to the frigid north. So, but as long as he's got good Wi-Fi, we'll let it slide.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad when I was up there.
Yeah, no, we didn't have any trouble staying in touch from up there, so it worked out great. Yeah. If nothing else, you can get Starlink nowadays, so
yeah,
works out pretty good.
I also just pushed a project that I've been working on into production, so it's live on the interwebs. But I'm not going to drop the domain because I'm still working on it, and it's.
You don't want our people to go bust it up for you and then tell you how bad it was?
No, actually, I would prefer people like you to go check it out and go through the process. There's a section of it that's not done yet, and I would rather wait to promote it. Until
as soon as it's ready, let's bring it up because, obviously, getting fans of the show to go and spend some time on it and pressure test it. It's always a good thing.
Had the family do it the other night and seems to be working fine. Haven't had any weirdness as far. When I first pushed it to production, I'm using a Next.js app, and the auth system is through NextAuth, which is it's kind of a fairly simple way to handle authentication. And I'm using the Google client provider to do it. And once I pushed to production and took it off my local server, there was about a 2-day propagation time frame where you would go to log in, and Google would put this big message up saying, "Hey, this is a dangerous site. You shouldn't be going and checking it out." So evidently they have like a verification process that they go through before they'll actually allow it to work. And that was kind of frustrating because I was trying to debug stuff not knowing that it was them that was like just taking their time. And so I changed like the .env file and all the settings and all that stuff, trying to, it's got to be the callback function here, and it's nothing to do with that. And so it was like super annoying, but it's live, and I'll have you beta test it for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, happy to take a look.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But anyways, that's it for me. Anything else you want to go over?
No, that was a massive enough download and plenty of me. I'm sure everybody's worn out. So
shut up, Ryan.
Well, it's shut up, Ryan. And it's like, Ryan, could you just stick to like a linear path? Like, I mean, your stories are like, so it's like everything begets something else. I mean, we started out in Norway. We ended up in Amsterdam. We went back to Norway. Then it's like, we're all over the damn place. So anyway, but yeah, lots of fun. Shouts out to everybody who was great and kind and awesome in Amsterdam. I encourage everybody to stay at Art Hotel, W Hotel, or How or Now, or however you say it, in Rotterdam. They were amazing too. All those were amazing experiences. Couldn't be happier. Delta was great on the flights. We were really worried because the day we flew out was like day 2 or 3 of that big outage they had.
Oh, damn.
And so we were really nervous, like watching all the way down to the minute, like if we were going to get canceled. And luckily we did not. And everything went swimmingly. So shout out to Delta for getting their shit together.
That's
And
great.
yeah, coming home, no problem. So all good everywhere. And yeah, it was a successful venture. So so thrilled for all that stuff. And last shout out to the Warning and Rudy Joffroy, their manager, for all their help and making that happen. You know, cool guys. Check out their new album, Keep Me Fed. Just came out like in July, I think. So you know, check out the new album, and they're touring all over the planet. I think they just got home from, I think Amsterdam was their last night of tour. And then they had, I think, a festival the next night, and then they're home. So hopefully they're getting a break. They've done like, I don't know, 60 days in the last 70.
That's crazy.
So they could use a breather, I'm sure. So anyway, but shouts out to them, and thanks for everything. And thanks for everybody in Amsterdam. And if anybody wants to send me like some bonus miles or points for great reviews, I'm willing and able to receive them.
There you go.
So, anyway, but with that, shout out to everybody who listens to the show this week and every week. And, you know, hopefully we're back with a guest next week. So take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.